for my irresponsible and selfish behavior I engaged in. 16 years after one of sport's biggest scandals, Elin Nordegren is finally speaking out about her life with Tiger Woods. She shares her side of the story, the truth behind the headlines, and how she has rebuilt her life since those shocking events. Join us as we uncover Elin's journey, the challenges she faced, and the life she has created for herself today. Before the world knew him, before the scandals, before the headlines, and before his personal life became public drama, Tiger Woods was already one of the most talked about young athletes in the world. His story started long before fame, shaped by family, discipline, and a level of focus that most children never experience. Tiger was born Eldrick Taunt Woods in 1975 in California. From the very beginning, his identity stood out. He never saw himself fitting into just one category. Instead, he created the term Cablinasian to describe who he was, a blend of Caucasian, Black, American Indian, and Asian heritage. This was not just a label. It was his way of taking ownership of how the world perceived him, especially as someone growing up in such a highly visible space. A huge part of his early development came through his father, Earl Woods, a retired U.S. Army officer and Vietnam War veteran who believed deeply in discipline, focus, and mental strength. These were not just ideals he spoke about. He actively instilled them in Tiger from a very young age. Their bond was close but structured. Earl was not simply raising a son. He was shaping a future competitor. Because of his military background, Earl had access to facilities most families never could, including golf courses connected to military bases such as the Navy Golf Course. These were not casual, beginner-friendly environments. They exposed Tiger to serious high-level play from the very start, creating an atmosphere where expectations were already elevated long before anyone else was paying attention. What makes his story truly remarkable is just how early it all began. Tiger was introduced to golf before he even turned 2 years old. By the time most children were still developing basic motor coordination, he was already swinging a club with purpose. At just 2 years old, he appeared on national television, including a memorable appearance on a show with Bob Hope, where he demonstrated his skills to a nationwide audience. The milestones came quickly after that. At age 3, he shot a 48 over 9 holes, a score that many adult beginners struggle to match. By age 5, he was being featured in major golf publications and appearing on television programs. He was not simply impressive for his age. He was performing at a level that stopped people in their tracks regardless of age or experience. As he grew older, he began dominating junior competitions across the country, winning major championships and building a reputation as the finest young golfer in America. Winning became his baseline. But with that success came immense pressure. People began expecting greatness every single time he stepped onto a course. The belief that he was destined for something extraordinary followed him everywhere he went. That raised a deeper question. Was Tiger choosing this path, or had it already been chosen for him? With his father's guiding hand, years of structured training, and a constant stream of victories, it often felt as though everything had been set in motion long before he ever had a say. And just as the world settled into the comforting belief that they were watching a perfect rise, something far more complicated was quietly taking shape beneath the surface. As Tiger moved into his teenage years, it became undeniably clear that he was no longer simply a gifted child. He was competing at levels that placed him ahead of nearly every peer he faced. He entered major junior tournaments across the United States and consistently dominated, not just participating but winning with a focus and composure that set him apart. His confidence and consistency turned heads at every event. During this period, he also began facing stronger competition and forming early rivalries. One notable encounter came when he was paired with John Daly in a national junior tournament. Daly was already known for his powerful and aggressive style of play. Although Tiger did not win that particular round, the experience demonstrated that he could hold his own against established, top-level talent. These competitive experiences helped sharpen his game and prepare him for even larger stages ahead. Another significant moment came when he met Jack Nicklaus, widely regarded as one of the greatest golfers in history. The encounter was more than symbolic. It signaled to the broader golf world that Tiger was being taken seriously at a very young age. His father had already set an ambitious benchmark for him, challenging him to one day surpass Nicklaus's records, and that goal only added further weight and attention to everything Tiger did. His amateur career was defined by record-breaking achievements. At just 15 years old, he became the youngest player ever to win the U.S. Junior Amateur Championship. That milestone alone would have been enough for most. But Tiger did not stop there. He went on to capture that title multiple times, becoming the only player in history to win it 3 consecutive years. His consistency made one thing unmistakably clear. He was not simply on a good run. He was establishing an entirely new standard. In 1996, Tiger made the pivotal decision to turn professional. The expectations surrounding that move were already staggeringly high. Almost immediately, he signed endorsement agreements with major corporations including Nike and Titleist, deals that were among the largest ever seen in professional golf at the time. These partnerships signaled that the business world believed in him not only as an athlete but as a global brand with extraordinary commercial appeal. Then came 1997, the year that changed everything. Tiger won the Masters tournament in utterly dominant fashion at just 21 years old, delivering one of the most commanding performances in the history of the sport. With that victory, he became the youngest Masters champion ever recorded. In an instant, he was no longer a rising star. He was the undisputed face of golf. Shortly after, he reached the world #1 ranking faster than any player before him. His on-course brilliance combined with his rapidly growing popularity transformed him into a global icon. He was not merely winning tournaments. He was fundamentally changing how the world related to the sport of golf. As his career continued its extraordinary trajectory, so did his financial success. Endorsement income, prize money, and global brand recognition made him one of the highest-earning athletes on the planet. Over time, he would become the first athlete in history to surpass $1 billion in career earnings, a milestone that underscored just how profound his cultural and commercial impact had become. Yet beneath the polished surface of his public image, things were not quite as perfectly controlled as they appeared. His image was meticulously managed. His success was taken for granted, and the pressure surrounding him never truly let up. And just as his life seemed to be the picture of everything a person could want, someone entirely unexpected was about to walk into it and alter the course of everything. Elin Nordegren had been living a quiet, grounded life in Sweden long before the world ever knew her name. Born in Stockholm in 1980, she grew up in a family that carried some degree of public recognition, though not in any celebrity sense. Her upbringing was defined by structure, education, and a strong sense of personal responsibility rather than fame or privilege. Her mother, Barbro Holmberg, built a distinguished career in public service, eventually becoming Sweden's Minister for Migration and Asylum Policy and later serving as a county governor. Her father, Thomas Nordegren, was a well-respected radio journalist who also served as a bureau chief in Washington, D.C. Despite growing up in a well-connected household, Ellen's environment was one built on diligence and accountability, not luxury or celebrity culture. When Ellen was just 7 years old, her parents divorced, reshaping the structure of her home life. But the values she had been raised with remained firmly intact. She grew up alongside her siblings, including her twin sister, and understood from an early age that she was responsible for her own path. Her upbringing placed a strong emphasis on staying grounded and working hard. As a teenager, she and her sister took jobs as supermarket cashiers, not because they had to, but because they understood the value of earning their own way. This detail matters because it reveals something essential about who Ellen was. She was never someone who expected things to be handed to her. Her education continued to shape her direction. In her late teens, she spent a year in Berlin studying at the John F. Kennedy School, using that time to become fluent in both English and German. The experience broadened her independence and made her comfortable navigating life far from home. Around the year 2000, she briefly explored modeling and appeared on the cover of a magazine, which brought her a modest level of public attention. But modeling was never her ambition. She had a very different future in mind. She wanted to become a child psychologist, a goal that reflected where her genuine passions lay, in helping others and building a career with real, lasting meaning. In personality, Elin was strikingly different from the world of celebrity and professional sport. She was private, composed, and completely uninterested in public attention. While someone like Tiger Woods existed in a relentless spotlight, Elin was far more at ease away from it. She valued a normal life, personal privacy, and quiet growth. At that point in her life, her direction felt clear. She was focused on education, building independence, and creating a future that had nothing to do with global fame. Then, through a single unexpected connection, everything she had planned was about to take a very different turn. The story of how Elin Nordegren and Tiger Woods came to meet did not begin with romance or dramatic attraction. It began simply with work, timing, and a mutual connection through the professional golf world. That connection was Jesper Parnevik, the Swedish golfer, and his wife Mia. Elin had taken a position working as a nanny for their family, caring for their children. That role brought her to the United States in 2001. She was not there chasing opportunity or trying to break into a glamorous social world. She was simply doing her job and building her own life on her own terms. Everything shifted when she encountered Tiger at the 2001 Open Championship. Jesper Parnevik made the introduction, but the moment did not unfold the way many might expect. Tiger Woods was already one of the most recognized athletes on the planet, a figure of enormous success and global fame. Yet Elin was entirely unimpressed. She was in a relationship at the time and had no particular interest in Tiger or his celebrity. That dynamic was instantly unusual. On one side stood a man accustomed to admiration and attention from nearly everyone he encountered. On the other stood a woman who was simply unbothered by all of it. That contrast made their early interaction genuinely different from the typical celebrity encounter. Over time, however, things began to slowly change. Even though Elin had shown no initial interest, they continued to cross paths through the Parnevik family's social circle. Tiger reportedly made genuine efforts to get to know her, and gradually the distance between them began to close. By 2002, they were officially in a relationship. As their connection deepened, media curiosity grew alongside it. Tiger's life had always been heavily scrutinized, and now journalists and fans were eager to know more about the woman he was spending his time with. Elin, who had always treasured her privacy, suddenly found herself under a level of public attention she had never sought or wanted. In November 2003, their relationship reached a major turning point. During the President's Cup in South Africa, Tiger proposed to Elin at a private luxury game reserve. She accepted, and with that, a new chapter began for both of them. From the outside, it looked like a relationship built carefully over time, serious and grounded rather than rushed or performative. And before long, that private love story would become one of the most publicly watched marriages in the world. When Tiger Woods and Elin Nordegren married in October 2004, every detail of the occasion reflected wealth, meticulous planning, and a fierce desire for privacy. The ceremony was held at the Sandy Lane Resort in Barbados, one of the most exclusive destinations in the world. Tiger did not simply book a venue. He reserved the entire resort for a full week, including its multiple golf courses and more than 100 rooms, at a reported cost approaching $2 million. The event was deliberately sealed off from media access, designed to feel intimate despite its extraordinary scale. After the wedding, the couple settled into life in Isleworth, a gated and highly private community in Windermere, Florida, home to many of the country's wealthiest and most prominent residents. From every external vantage point, their life appeared to be a model of balance and success. They had financial security, global recognition, and the kind of controlled, sheltered environment that shielded them from the relentless intrusion of public life. Tiger's career remained at its absolute peak during this period. He was collecting major championships, holding the world #1 ranking, and accumulating one of the most impressive athletic records in the history of sport. His commercial partnerships, particularly with Nike, continued to expand his global footprint. In time, he became the first athlete to earn more than $1 billion over the course of a career, a figure that only deepened the mythology surrounding him. Through all of it, Elin remained deliberately out of the spotlight. She supported Tiger, appeared at events when appropriate, and otherwise avoided the public gaze entirely. She was not building a personal brand or pursuing recognition of her own. Her focus was on her role as a wife and later as a mother. Her understated presence actually reinforced the public narrative of a stable, grounded marriage. But even during those early years together, subtle pressures were beginning to accumulate beneath the surface. The relentless pace of fame, the constant travel, the weight of perpetual expectation. These realities were easy for the outside world to overlook, but they were very much present. What appeared to be a flawless life was, in truth, considerably more complicated than it looked. As the years passed, Tiger and Elin continued constructing what the world perceived as the ideal family life. In 2006, they acquired a sprawling estate on Jupiter Island in Florida, valued at approximately $39 million, and began transforming it into a private, secure home where they could raise their children away from the public eye. In 2007, their first child arrived, a daughter they named Sam Alexis Woods. The name carried personal significance for Tiger, as Sam had been a nickname his father used for him. The birth added a new dimension to their public image. They were no longer simply a celebrated couple. They were now a family. In 2009, their son Charlie Woods was born. With 2 children, an extraordinary home, and a career of historic proportions, everything about their life appeared complete. The media portrayed them routinely as the definition of the modern ideal family, successful, content, and solid. Yet not everything was running smoothly behind closed doors. In 2006, a publication released fabricated photographs falsely claiming to depict Elin. She responded decisively, pursuing legal action and ultimately winning the case. The publication was required to issue a formal public apology, and she received financial compensation. While she navigated the episode with composure and resolve, it served as an early reminder of how quickly her private life could become unwanted public spectacle. Meanwhile, the external pressures surrounding both of them continued to intensify. Tiger's celebrity kept expanding, and with it came more scrutiny, more expectation, and less room for anything resembling a genuinely private existence. Every aspect of their lives was being observed, even when they took deliberate steps to prevent it. To the public, the image remained pristine. A celebrated athlete, a devoted partner, a growing family living in extraordinary comfort. But behind that carefully maintained image, something far more complicated was building, quietly and steadily, until it could no longer be contained. By 2009, Tiger Woods stood at the absolute summit of his profession. His fame, wealth, and global recognition had reached a level that only a handful of athletes in history had ever achieved. But sustaining that kind of success came with a way of living that was increasingly difficult to manage. The demands of constant travel, unrelenting media attention, and the pressure to perform at an elite level had created a growing divide between the life he showed the world and the one he was actually living. Publicly, the image held firm. He remained the disciplined competitor, the devoted family man, the role model. Privately, that image was beginning to fracture. The expectations never eased, and the life he was leading behind the scenes had grown far more complicated than anyone on the outside could see. In November of 2009, the ground beneath that carefully maintained image began to shift. The National Enquirer published a report alleging that Tiger had been involved in an affair with a woman named Rachel Ucketel. The story spread rapidly and instantly drew widespread public attention. For Elin, it was the first time her marriage had been called into serious question in such a public and undeniable way. Tiger moved quickly to manage the situation. He arranged for Elin to speak directly with Ucketel by phone, during which Ucketel denied any involvement and insisted there was no relationship between them. For a brief moment, the denial seemed to quiet things down. Tiger appeared to believe the situation had been diffused. But Elin was not fully persuaded. Her doubts continued to grow in the days that followed. At some point, Tiger left his phone unattended, and Elin took the opportunity to look through it. What she found did not provide the reassurance she was looking for. She came across names and contacts that raised further questions, and when she attempted to follow up on one of them, she did not receive a satisfactory answer. The uncertainty only deepened. This marked the moment when everything inside their marriage began to quietly unravel. What had started as a single tabloid story had grown into something she could no longer simply push aside. Elin was no longer reacting to headlines. She was searching for the truth about her own life. The emotional atmosphere between them shifted dramatically. The sense of trust and calm that had defined their household was gone, replaced by unspoken tension, guarded conversations, and a mounting feeling that something had gone deeply and irreparably wrong. Nothing had yet come fully into the open, but the foundation of their relationship was already giving way. And within just a few days, everything would collapse at once in a way neither of them could control. By Thanksgiving night in 2009, the tension that had been steadily building inside the Woods household was approaching a breaking point. What had begun as suspicion was about to become something far more devastating. Late that night, after Tiger had fallen asleep, Elin picked up his phone again. This time she was not merely looking. She was determined to find answers. When she went through his messages, she found what she had feared. The texts she read revealed a level of closeness and intimacy that could not be rationalized or explained away. For Elin, this was the moment doubt gave way entirely to certainty. Rather than confronting Tiger immediately, she decided to test what she was seeing. She began sending messages to Rachel Ucketel, writing as though she were Tiger. The responses came back quickly and confirmed everything she suspected. There was no longer any room for uncertainty. Elin now knew the truth. What happened next moved with startling speed. She called Rachel directly, identified herself, and the conversation ended shortly after. But the damage was done. Elin confronted Tiger. The exchange that followed was neither calm nor measured. Tiger, having just been woken and suddenly faced with the full weight of what was happening, became overwhelmed. Rather than staying to face the situation, he attempted to flee. He rushed out of the house barefoot and got into his Cadillac Escalade. Within moments, chaos erupted. As he drove away from the property, he lost control of the vehicle. The SUV struck a curb, then a fire hydrant, and finally came to a stop when it crashed into a tree just beyond the edge of the property. The impact left him injured and disoriented. Neighbors were jolted awake by the noise and rushed outside. Elin was there as well, responding to what had just happened in front of her. Emergency services were called and arrived quickly. Tiger was found at the scene with visible facial injuries, bleeding and confused. He was transported to a hospital for treatment. That single night did not simply upend 2 lives. It took something that had been a deeply private matter and thrust it into the full glare of public scrutiny. By the following morning, the entire world would be paying attention. In the immediate aftermath of the crash, Tiger attempted to manage the situation with a brief and carefully constructed public statement. He accepted responsibility for the accident itself but framed everything as a private matter, asking the public and the press to respect his family's privacy and to refrain from turning a personal situation into public discussion. In that moment, he was still working to keep the true circumstances hidden from public view. But that effort did not last long. The media had already begun digging, and the story was spreading far faster than any statement could contain. What had initially appeared to be nothing more than a late-night car accident was rapidly evolving into something of an entirely different magnitude. As the days passed, new allegations began to surface. Women started coming forward claiming they had been involved with Tiger in various capacities. Rachel Ucketel had already been named publicly, but she was only the beginning. The number of reported connections kept climbing. Some accounts placed the total at over a dozen, with certain reports suggesting the number may have been as high as 14 or beyond. The revelations transformed public perception almost overnight. For years, Tiger had been viewed as the embodiment of focus, discipline, and self-control. Now an entirely different portrait was emerging, and it bore little resemblance to the one the world had accepted for so long. The shift in narrative was sharp and jarring. Admiration curdled into shock. Many who had invested genuine belief in his carefully projected image felt a deep sense of betrayal. The financial consequences were swift and significant. Several of the major corporations that had built long-term partnerships with Tiger began to sever those ties. Accenture ended its sponsorship, citing that he no longer represented the values their brand stood for. AT&T withdrew its support as well. Gatorade discontinued the product line it had developed around him. These were not minor affiliations. They were cornerstone partnerships that had helped construct his identity as a global commercial force. Losing them represented both a substantial financial blow and a profound reputational one. His image had been among his most valuable assets. Now it was compromised in a way that could not simply be managed away. Even entities within the golf world itself began to create distance. Media coverage remained relentless, with each new detail sustaining the story's momentum and keeping it at the center of public conversation. Eventually, Tiger made a further public admission. He acknowledged personal failures and announced that he would be stepping away from professional golf indefinitely. Shortly afterward, reports emerged that he had entered a rehabilitation program to address issues related to sex addiction, a decision framed as a genuine attempt to confront his behavior and begin the process of rebuilding his life. By that point, the situation had transcended the boundaries of a personal scandal. It had become one of the most widely discussed and consequential stories in the entire history of professional sport. And while the world's attention remained fixed on Tiger, Elin was quietly living through something entirely different behind closed doors. By the middle of 2010, the damage to Tiger and Elin's marriage had become impossible to deny or repair. Even after Tiger completed his time in rehabilitation, further revelations about the extent of his affairs continued to emerge, making it clear to Elin that trust could not be restored. The decision to end the marriage became not just inevitable but necessary. Legal proceedings were initiated in Florida, where both parties formally filed for divorce. Throughout the process, Elin remained largely withdrawn from public view, avoiding the media attention that had defined so much of the preceding months. On August 23, 2010, the divorce was officially finalized in Bay County Circuit Court in Panama City, Florida. Together, Tiger and Elin issued a brief joint statement expressing mutual sadness at the end of their marriage and wishing one another well for the future. The tone was measured, civil, and focused on moving forward rather than assigning blame. Custody of their two children, Sam and Charlie, was arranged jointly, with both parents committing to raise them cooperatively despite the profound personal difficulties that had brought them to this point. The financial terms of the settlement were reported to reflect the prenuptial agreement that Elin had renegotiated during Tiger's time in rehabilitation, securing her future appropriately while dividing shared assets. In the years ahead, Elin would step fully into her own life, on her own terms, and entirely on her own. More than 6 years after the scandal and the end of her marriage, Elin Nordegren finally chose to speak publicly in 2016. For all of that time, she had remained silent, directing her energy entirely toward her children and her own quiet process of healing. She decided to break that silence because she wanted to set the record straight and offer her own account of events that had been widely distorted and misrepresented in the press. In speaking out, Elin conveyed the depth of what she had endured. She made clear that the word betrayal barely began to capture the reality of what she had experienced. The emotional devastation had been profound, and moving through it had demanded an enormous amount of strength, clarity, and sheer determination. She did not speak to seek sympathy. She spoke because she wanted her truth to exist in the public record, and because she had genuinely moved forward and wanted to communicate that honestly. She also took the opportunity to directly address and refute persistent rumors that she had been violent on the night of the crash. She stated plainly that she had not struck Tiger or acted with any physical aggression. In her account, the night was one of fear and concern. When Tiger left the house and did not return, she went to find him. She discovered him in the crashed Escalade and did everything she could to help him get free. She was firm in her rejection of any version of events that suggested otherwise, calling those reports false and without foundation. After years of silence, Elin Nordegren had finally told her story, and in doing so, she reclaimed the narrative that had for so long been told entirely without her.